Hi, everyone, and welcome to the first ever episode of Trans Talk. You may know me as Tater Talk Gaming, Tayton's Tats. Um, my name is Tayton. I'm a 24-year-old trans woman, and I've been wanting to start a podcast for a very long time, and I've just had a lot in the works and been thinking about like what I can do. And you know what? I thought, why not go big for the first episode and react to something that's very controversial. In the past 9 days, it has 1.3 million views. Um, so we're going to start off with the trans conservatives reacting to the Jubilee video Middle Ground trans conservatives versus trans liberals. Um, and I just want to start off by saying um, I am neither Republican, I am not Democrat, I'm very independent, I'm very in the middle. I think our party system has failed us and it's only separated us more. Um, and so I think it's a little controversial to even have conservatives versus liberals. I think it should have just been here's 8 trans people, let's do a video on what they believe. So I know that, um, you know, there are some influencers in this video, um, one being Blaire White, and I neither like her or dislike her. I have no opinions about anyone except for myself. Um, I know I did see that she said some of the editing was kind of misplaced and not put correctly, and so it was kind of made to make her look a little on edge, and one of the other creators was a little bit more uh, controversial as well. So I just want to put a trigger warning out there. There are some, not acts of violence, but threats of violence. There's also some really just triggering topics, and if that isn't for you, I would suggest clicking off. But yeah, so let's get into it.
There's nuance.
It depends.
Yes.
Yeah, there's
So I think that to start it off though too is it's not necessarily saying that trans women. It all comes down to self-ID. When we moved into a self-ID process, there are a lot of people, there are a lot of men, just simply self-IDing into being trans women to utilize the female restroom and to harm women. I think
Or
that's the
just
biggest
be
thing.
there. They're getting arousal from just being there.
You know, there was a photo or it was a video that went viral, I think like just 2 weeks ago, with some like whole man with a boner in the women's restroom. And there's just some poor woman filming it. Like, am I just supposed to like accept that this is here?
So I think this is my first problem I have with the subject. Um, yes, there is a problem with um, men going in the women's restroom and taking advantage of women's spaces. Um, but I don't think that's a trans issue. That's a everyone issue of men using the women's restroom.
So I think there's levels to it. I think that trans women who are actually trans, you know, we're talking gender dysphoria, transitions, making the effort, you know, probably once you reach a certain point in your transition where you can actually assimilate within that space and not cause a disruptance, that would probably be the ideal time to start doing that, right? Whereas, you know, a cross-dresser who is emboldened to, in this current climate, say that they're trans because now anything is trans if you say so, that person should probably stay absolutely out of women's restrooms because you're there to get your rocks off and the women are.
I know. I I don't see being trans is not a look. Um, there are some cisgendered women who are more masculine. There are some men who are more feminine. Um, so I don't think it's really about how you look. It's your identity and who you are. If you're there to use the restroom, you're there to use the restroom. Go in, go out. That's That's how I feel about it. Um, but if you are, not, if you, I know like crossdresser is a thing. If you identify as a man, use the men's restroom. If you identify as a woman, use the women's restroom. I don't care how you look. Just use the restroom how you feel and go in, go out.
Are there to take a poop and a pee. So it's not the same. And I really empathize with women who, have an issue with it. And I can probably hear some women commenting, well, how do I know the difference between a fetishist and a real trans person? It's hard. It's hard. However, that's the only nuance that I know to give to it, which is there's different reasons people are trans, and some people really are trans because they're horny, and some people are trans because they really felt that way from, a young age or whatever.
See, I agree to an extent. Like when you go to transition, and this is a fairly universal experience. Once you get to a certain point of passing, that's about the time that you would start going into the other bathroom, as opposed to not make the same sex uncomfortable. Once you reach that point in your transition, a lot of things change, but you start to see things from another perspective. You start to see things from the perspective of a cis person.
Yeah.
And I actually offer some solutions to this because I believe the free market can handle all of this stuff, because in government-run and government-funded buildings, there should always be a third space for us to use.
See, when I grew up, before I came out as trans, I identified as a gay male. And I remember many times feeling uncomfortable in the men's restroom just because people knew who I was and I lived in a small town. And most of the time I was with women and they would like make me come with them into the bathroom because I felt uncomfortable. I think the bathroom in general is just a really uncomfortable place. And if we all just learn to use the restroom how we should use it, then there shouldn't be any problems. Unfortunately, we do have men and women out there that abuse the bathroom, and I think that it should just be used appropriately. Uh, do I agree with what she's about to say, the third space? I do. I don't think anyone should be forced to use the third space, but I do think it should be an option. It should be available. Um, it's really not that hard to make another bathroom. Um, but I do think some trans people would feel more comfortable being able to use a third space. Um, yeah, but just listen to what she says.
And I do, when I go to the Capitol and stuff like that, I always use third spaces. But I think that private property owners can make the rules for their establishment and figure out how to enforce those rules.
I mean, I
They're
wouldn't
not-
say
they're not
third
being allowed,
spaces for
though.
trans
Exactly,
people.
like
just
we're in a state
in
right
general.
now. We're in a state right now where you have to allow anybody to use whatever restroom they want.
If you're a decent human being, you do what causes the least disturbance. So for example, I filmed a YouTube video a few years ago where I entered a men's restroom just because I was responding to comments who were like, well, maybe you should use a men's restroom if you really feel like the way you feel. And so I said, okay, let's do it. Let's put a camera. And I was kicked out within seconds of the entire establishment, and it was a whole ruckus. So that's what I mean by, if you're a decent person, you do what causes the least amount of problems for people around you. And if
I saw that video. If I'm thinking of the same video, it was Blaire White's YouTube channel, and uh, she went into a men's restroom, and she was not. I don't want to put anything. I don't know if it was the same video or if it wasn't the same video. She was not. If it's the video I'm thinking of, she was not kicked out of the bathroom. She actually had a man question why she was in there, but then they took a Snapchat together and said, I made a new friend, or something like that, in regards to being in the men's restroom. Um, and then she was playing around going up to the urinal, which I thought was iconic. Like I said, I'm not a fan of her. I don't dislike her. I think we all have our own opinions, but I think it's funny that, as a trans woman, she went into the men's restroom. I don't think I could do that, but I just thought that was funny. But she did not get kicked out of the bathroom if that was the same video.
if you're, a moral person, you're going to be conflict avoidant in general when it's something like that, right? It's like,
Yeah.
what's the point of causing issues for anyone, especially if you're really just trying to pee,
Honestly, just put
get
your
it
head
done.
down, go in, get out.
Right?
Can the disagreeers please step forward? I want to comment on Blaire's point. The one thing I kept hearing through all of the nuance is passability.
I never
Because
said that.
ultimately, when we talk about passability, it determines how you get harassed and passable or whatnot. People are going to say, oh, that's a man with a dress on, and then there's going to be discourse. But the reality of it is, honestly, who cares who's trans and who's cis going in the bathroom? You should be minding your own business, being able to pee and do your business in peace for the most part. That conversation around this man with a boner on or whatever like that, I saw that picture and I thought to myself, that's really a right-wing talking point and conservative propaganda because that's their ideology.
How is it
When
It
it
was a
comes
thing.
Yeah, she lost me there. Can the right-wing conservatives use that as a propaganda? Yes. In that sense, was it propaganda? Absolutely not. Um, it's a problem, and it should be fixed. So I don't know what she's saying here.
Thing
to
that
trans. I'm
happened.
speaking. That's their ideology when it comes to trans. It's because conservatives have a basic level understanding of what transness is in the first place. And with all due respect, I do not think any of you are basic, but they use you as the baseline to amplifying this propaganda.
How is
just
it
ask you a question.
propaganda if it's a thing that really happened? It was caught on video. Like it was an actual occurrence. It wasn't
Okay.
staged. It happened, and that's not the only. It's not an isolated incident.
But that's not enough for me to say because actors can do that. Who knows? They could have been an actor trying to make a point against trans people. But this has always been our battle. It's just like from
She just told you it was a real occurrence, so it wasn't an actor. It was a real occurrence. It happened. It was a problem. Uh, yeah.
what I just heard you were saying with your talking points, because I did understand what you were saying. I just got the word passability out of there, and
Which I didn't
to
say
a-
that word at all.
No,
Yeah,
I'm
no,
saying
he
that
said
word.
passability.
Why did they go from there's a man in the restroom with a boner to passability? Why is passability a problem? It's the problem of there's a man in the restroom with a boner making women uncomfortable. So we're not defending him, but we're skipping it.
I'm saying
She didn't say it. He
I'm
did. And the
I'll say
problem,
it.
the left,
okay. I can.
the
I
problem
couldn't
with
hear. I just couldn't hear back there.
the
But no, what I was
liberals,
saying
the
was
liberals always use the.
yeah. No, what I'm saying is, I'm not saying you said that word. What I was getting out of what you were saying, the one word that was coming to me was passability. This is Blossom saying it. And so passability politics is really a thing in our trans community, especially when we come to the debate of restrooms.
Well, you can say it's politics, but actually it's just real life, right? It's just about
Correct.
where
I
you're
agree.
able to assimilate to and where you're not. And I think one of the biggest problems in the trans community is the community by and large has seemed to reject assimilation and seems hell-bent on.
That's not true.
I think it's absolutely true, which is you see people talking about how you don't need to work on your transition at all to enter women's restrooms. And I think that that is so selfish.
That drives me
so it's
crazy.
so disregarding of women who may or may not feel
But
uncomfortable.
the trans woman experience is not monolithic. So who are we
I
to
never said it
police transness? Why are we policing other people's transness
I'm
and
just
how they
listening to
show up?
women.
We have to
But why
protect women.
Why are y'all policing though? That's
Yeah, this is where there's like a very black and gray kind of area where do I think trans women should make some sort of uh, effort? Yes and no. Um, I don't think a woman needs to look a certain way to use a restroom. I don't think that a trans woman should look a certain way to use a restroom. Um, but do I think, like a 23-year-old frat boy with a backwards cap and uh, you know, basketball shorts should be walking in the women's restroom? I don't know. But, you know, if you identify as a woman, go in there, use the restroom, get out.
That's what I don't
But
understand.
you're using words
there's
that we're not
policing.
using. It's not policing. We're listening to women.
policing.
And if you have 50%, we won't say 50%, but if you have a large chunk of the population of women saying that they are uncomfortable with a certain thing, a good person leans in and listens.
So why
They
are
don't
you
just
not listening
reject
to
it.
other trans women, Blaire?
I
think
do
that's
all day. I am
okay,
right
so,
now.
But you didn't, and I'm not trying to be combative or whatever like that. I'm just trying to figure out, you know what I'm saying, what the middle ground would be between you and I, because you said one side and that's
I'm gonna say that middle ground for me for this topic is if you see someone in the restroom that you feel uncomfortable with, walk out. Wait until they come back out and then use the restroom. Um, I mean, I feel like that's the only way to really come at that, but that's just my opinion. So this topic is, should minors be able to have top surgery? And you know, I'm kind of glad they went at it like this because I feel like it's mostly when it's used in politics, it's usually about young trans women, not young trans men. So I'm kind of glad they switched it up a little bit. Um, for me personally, um, I think anything after puberty blockers, uh, I think you should wait until you're 18. I think that's just, I, I mean, some of us had to wait after that, and some of us have to wait longer. Um, so, do I think that minors should have surgery to change their gender? No. Um, if they've had years of therapy, uh, 16, 17 maybe, but anything before that, no, definitely not.
Really?
You guys waited on that?
That's pretty vile.
I feel like the vibe is like like as someone who had top surgery and went on hormones, like it's a very emotionally intense experience. I think in terms of like minors getting surgery, like the reason why I'm not like no to that is because I feel like maybe someone's like 17 or something. I honestly feel like it is a really intense surgery, but I feel like if somebody's like 17 or like late 16 and like feels like it's right for them, I mean, like people are really different. I know for me, like top surgery when I was like 16 would have been like so good, and it would have literally like saved my spinal cord from like binding all the time. That's why I'm like, yeah, like I feel like in instances like it can make sense.
So I'm not a trans man, so I don't have the experience or whatnot, but I do think that it has to be done safely. There is a process when it comes to having these types of gender affirming surgeries. You know what I'm saying? Talking with your parents and then going to endocrinologists and going through therapy to make sure this is right for you. People have a choice to their autonomy. Now, I know that everybody does not,
Yep.
but those that do or whatnot should choose with the right medical education.
Yeah.
They should choose with safety and with full understanding of what is a benefit and what may not be a benefit.
I agree with a caveat that there does need to be some sort of process, which there is, by the way,
Yeah.
in place.
Yes, absolutely.
Sometimes there's a slip through. Yes, things happen because, again, as I said earlier, this is a big world. But to, again, negate people the ability to walk through a door that you have walked through, I'm going to say this again, and then close it behind you, is a little bit of a slap in the face for anybody who's seeking transition.
Yeah.
And as somebody who has experienced top surgery and also waited quite a bit of time, a lot of severe damage actually was created to my rib cage that my wife, who is half my size, actually has the same size rib cage in the back as mine. And these are permanent damage to my body because I binded for about 8 years, and there's even still issues that I have with breathing and certain issues that I face that, you know, unfortunately, if I had that surgery a lot earlier, I would have a better posture. I'd have a lot of pain that is not within my body.
I just want to make it clear that they state in this that the reason why they have a lot of this pain is because of binding. And if you don't know what binding is, it can be different things, but usually they've gotten a little bit better with it. They have a medical tape now where they can place it in a specific form to allow for a man's chest to be pulled to the side to make it give more of a flat appearance. Um, Before the tape came out, it was more so a medical bandage, um, or not a bandage, it's a wrap. Um, and they would flatten their chest and wrap around their entire bodies. And there wasn't a lot of research out there, but there also wasn't. There was some, trans people who would tell you do not bind for longer than this amount of time, do not, wear it all the time, do not bind too tight. And a lot of trans men want to be as flat as possible, and they tend to not follow the instructions. They're also children, so there's not really a warning on it. Or there wasn't a warning on it. And they were also children, so following the rules or instructions isn't uh, at the top of your mind when you're that young. But I just want to make it clear that that's why a lot of trans men have problems now with pain.
Body that I have to deal with on a daily basis, while simultaneously the idea that, I get maybe under 16 top surgery would be something that would possibly even make me a little uncomfortable, but I also know that I was homeless at 16, paying my own rent, and left my home at 16 and had to live my life as an adult very early. So I was able to make those decisions for myself, but I think it's weird that others can't seem to see that I could make a medical decision for myself when I had to physically take care of myself. And I look at some of these younger kids, and there's a sense of jealousy there and excitement for them at the same time, because they now have access to memories and being in the space and being in a comfortable body that, I.
This is why I say 16 to 17 is a little iffy, but this is where I think the years of therapy plays in. It's obviously very clear that there are 16 and 17-year-olds out there that are a lot more mentally capable to handle these certain things. The maturity levels are a lot higher than others. And I think, if you have a therapist who's known you for like a while and they know your maturity level and they know you and they know your transition, and, I don't believe anyone should have to prove their existence or their transition, but I do think that at certain times, I myself don't think I would have been mentally ready for a surgery that big, but I also think that, 16 is a little iffy. 17, I feel like if you are mentally mature, you know, let them do them. It's their body.
Had a lot of isolation growing up in my childhood because I didn't feel comfortable to present in a female space or a male space. I was isolated constantly from school, from the outside world, from my family. And my transition, my top surgery has done nothing but take physical pain off my body, especially with as large chested as I was and having to bind for as many years as I did.
Yes to fresh with Mentos gum.
Plus, it comes in a durable paperboard gum bottle that can weather pretty much anything.
Claritin provides powerful allergy relief. Plus, it won't make you drowsy like Zyrtec can.
I don't think any minor should be having life-altering elective surgery or life-altering elective medicalization, period. And so when I work on bills across the country that do ban this for minors, there's a couple things I point out. I point out that I don't think a 16-year-old female who wants breast implants should be able to get that either. When we look at what we allow minors to do, like surgeries and stuff like that, they're not life-saving. They're not, if you don't get it, you're not going to die. It's not like getting, like having appendicitis and having to get your appendix removed or anything like that. It's elective. I think that's the key point here.
Agreed.
My thing about surgery, I'm actually vehemently against surgery, like all of it, top surgery, bottom surgery, all of it. Particularly because you need your genitals. Like, it's just that simple.
Hello.
You know, you have these people now who have not.
This is where I kind of get iffy with him a little bit, because I wouldn't say this if I knew it and other people didn't, because I don't know him, but he has said it on this platform. He said it on here that he still has his chest, and he doesn't feel like having surgery because he says you need your genitals. Cancer patients remove their chest all the time, so obviously the chest area is not necessary to have. Bottom surgery, I don't want to go too far in this because this isn't about me, but I never had testosterone in my body naturally, without medication. So technically my genitals have never done anything for me. But I don't know where he's going with this.
Non-functioning fake penises and vaginas that, you know, you've had issues like, for instance, Richie had where like your urethra folds in half and then you can't pee no more.
This is about
are you against top surgery too? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just surgery in general. I don't think that that's necessarily like you said, it's not like you have appendicitis. It's not like you've got like a bone spur. It's, you know, like you don't.
He reminds me of like in school, you would have like not a controversial topic, but you'd have like some sort of topic, and there's like half the room is going at it with the other half, and then you have the one random kid that's just like, I disagree with all of this, and like makes no sense, and then the other half starts going back at it with the other half. So, yeah, this is just my thought.
I disagree with
Not
that because
having
I was in
surgery.
physical pain, and the moment that I got that top surgery, the pain was
Well,
alleviated.
that means you needed a breast reduction, my friend.
No, it's just
No,
binding, dude.
that's from
Binding goes
in
crazy.
general, it
I mean, I
causes
binded
some
for 8
issues.
years. I know, like it
I
sucks.
know, but like if you just keep binding, like honestly, like my ribs are like, I'm like, ew, I hate my ribs. Like they're all like messed up.
Is that an
get your
issue
body
with
type.
safety of binding though? I'm actually curious.
Yeah,
about
like
this.
honestly,
it's the
but
safety
the
of,
thing
of
is
how
too,
they
like,
teach you to.
Okay, this is my last time I'm gonna bring him up, but he says that just means you need a breast reduction. I don't know if he knows that a breast reduction is also a surgery, and if you're going in there to remove, typically during a breast reduction, depending on, you know, technique and everything, they do remove some of the tissue, and they also remove they remove the glands. Or not during a breast reduction. During a breast reduction, they remove some of the fat and the skin to give a smaller appearance. But that's also surgery, so why wouldn't you just get rid of it all if you're a trans man?
I think it comes with like the size of your chest. So like I had a big chest, so like
Same.
I had it was the only way. You know what I mean?
Same.
And I did try and like bind like safely, and I did buy like reputable like binder brands, but it is a lot when you're doing it for a really long time
I
and
used to wear
ultimately
it for
like
3 days straight.
I know, me too. Like, and that's what's like you're not supposed to.
Was
but like,
your doctor telling you that that's not safe because you're not even supposed to wear
Yeah,
it
of
24
course.
hours?
My doctor's
straight,
old
right?
school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know, and I
6
did
to
have
8
to go
hours is
through
fine.
like top surgery and testosterone. Like I had to go through like a really big process, and I think that's my thing is like instead of an age thing, I think there's like there should be a process. You should have to like live as that gender and be seeking care and be having like a therapist for long term and a psychiatrist for long term and an endocrinologist for long term, and like it's.
This is exactly what I was saying is if you are at the maturity level and you have been with your therapist and your doctors for a while, then why would that stop you? You know?
Really like specific to the person, and I think would be like really rare anyway, but that's just my stance.
That I agree with to an extent.
This is definitely the prompt that I am the most passionate about because I think there are few things more vile, more irresponsible, more, dangerous than saying a child can consent to permanently removing a body part that serves an extremely important function. Detransitioners all over the country can never breastfeed their children if they can even have them, because if they did other things, that can stop them from having kids at all, right? The idea that a child can consent to a sex change, to gender-affirming surgery.
Introducing Astapro Allergy. It starts working in 30 minutes, while Flonase takes hours, so you can Astapro and go. Only the Sleep Number Climate 360 Smart Bed lets you each sleep up to 13 degrees cooler or warmer on either side. Shop now.
If you believe that, there's really nothing that you can.
This is kind of the part where I'm like, she refers to all of anyone under 18 as a child, and I do see where she's coming from. But I'm also, 16, 17, you can make other life choices at 16, 17. At 16, you can consent to having, intercourse with an adult. In some states, at 16 and 17, you can quite do a lot. At 14 years old, I was able to get my own insurance through a job. Did I do that? No, because I was very lucky and privileged to have a mother that did that for me. But at 16 and 17, you can do a lot for yourself. And I think when we talk about children, I think it should be more so, under 16, but I do get where she's coming from for some 16 and 17-year-olds who aren't at that maturity level. But, we can't say all 16 and 17-year-olds are, children.
Can believe they can't consent to, right? Because that's pretty extreme. That's a permanent body modification under the best circumstances. So you want to move aside all the complications, all the things you can't do, the sterilization, not being able to feed your kids. You can even set that aside. Just the permanent body modification. I mean, you have to be so demented to believe that a child fully understands. I heard a few conversations about, well, if the child fully understands, they don't. They don't, because they're children.
I'm
That's like how
21
being a
and I
child
still
works.
don't understand.
17-year-old, like if a 17-year-old's like living as male for like 5
The
years.
prompt was
it's
about
like,
minors, and
Yeah, but a
12-year-olds
17-year-old
are
is a
getting
minor.
top surgery. So it's easy to say, well, if it's 17-year-olds, okay, well,
In my state, that's actually
there's a
legal
nuance.
I don't know if I've ever seen a 12-year-old get top surgery. Maybe in the rare cases of cancer or something, but I don't know if that's true. I'd have to look it up. But I don't disagree with her. I don't think a 12-year-old should be having top surgery. But yeah, I'd have to look into that more.
Conversation about even 17-year-olds, I guess, because the age of consent in some places is lower, but that's not what's happening, right? It's 12-year-olds.
When we talk about minors, it's like, what age range are we really talking about?
Like I said, I'm not seeing 12-year-olds having surgery. Most of the time, it's like the 16, 17-year-olds. I know there's a rare case of a trans influencer who had her surgery at 15, I think, where that gets iffy. But I don't know if I've ever seen a 12-year-old have top surgery. I really would have to look into that.
here.
Anyone
Because
under
the
18.
thing is, when we talk about detransitioners or whatnot, all I hear is a lot of regret, right? Regret that they got these surgeries, regret of the complications, regret, and that's fine. I'm not taking away anybody's experience because these things do happen. But let's also remember, again, there is a process. Now, I have a lot of empathy for those detransitioners that have gone through the process and they are suffering.
But
I
it's
do
not
have
just
empathy for
detrans
that.
people. It's
But
not just
but that's
detrans
where
people.
I'm just talking about in the conversation, for this particular conversation. And I understand what you're saying because you're absolutely right. There are more people.
Even
that are
among
doing that.
adults, we all
But-
do different things in our
but-
transition. Some of us
correct.
want bottoms, some of us don't, some of us want tops, some of us don't.
I
So
understand,
you
but-
need a lot of time as an adult to figure out what you want to do.
But see, the thing is, though, some adults don't even understand what they want to do.
Exactly,
So,
so
that's the
how
kind
can a
of thing.
child?
But
But
see,
I
children,
wanna touch
wait a
on
minute,
one
let's
thing
not,
you said,
let's
fucking
not
planet.
underestimate the power of these kids today, okay? They are very much more educated because they have much more resources and access than we did coming
Wow.
up. So let's be
So
very
they're
clear about
advanced
that.
and they can
when we
consent.
talk
Who
about
else says that?
detransitioners, that has been the main topic here, or whatnot, because we
But
want to
it's
bring
not now.
detransition.
I think this is kind of where they're both kind of spewing out, and it's not really helping either of their cases. Because I mean, what Blaire is saying is even older people do not know. I love his facial expression right here, but even older people, obviously everyone does not always know what decisions that they want. So I mean, does she feel like she's at the age of consent? I think she's already had surgery, but do you think she believes that she should be able to consent to those things? Because I mean, it is confusing here. And then Blossom over here saying that children should have that ability. I don't even know her stance on this because she never really does say what she agrees or disagrees with. She kind of just confuses me most of the time. But they're both not helping their cases here.
Transitioners in to the room, so there's a space. Thank you.
To your point about the reason why I'm against it is because, like you said, the children need to go through the proper steps, the parents, the doctors. But in the state of California, if you, as a parent, tell your minor, no, you're not getting this, I'm not affirming your gender, I'm taking your kids away, and California is going to raise your kids for you. So
Canada
how's
too.
that?
Canada too.
That's not right.
We also know that, like, all those safeguards that you're talking about, they're not happening.
Yeah, that's
They're
what
not
I'm saying.
happening at all.
California will
and we,
take your
we
kids.
we know because there was a whistleblower out of St. Louis, and this isn't some conservative whistleblower. She was married to a trans man, and she considers herself queer. So she blew the whistle and said that they had an in-house doctor. If you couldn't find a affirming therapist to sign off on the form, they would pencil whip it.
But do you believe that it should happen? Do you believe there should be a process when it comes to medical transition?
No,
We have to
there's no
stop
right
it. So-
process for kids to hack
Oh
off
no,
their
I was
breasts.
asking her, honey. I'm sorry.
No,
I was
no.
asking
Well,
her.
I am.
That was like three different things right there. I'm gonna start off with the woman on the left, but taking away people's children to not because they're not affirming, I don't really think that helps anything. Because then you're just putting them into a system that gives them just as much trauma, if not more. Do I think there should be some sort of education on how parents should, allow their kids to explore a little bit more? Probably. That's a very hard situation because we we all know from, stories and stuff we've heard about the foster care system, and I have 3 family members who have been in the foster care system, and they would tell me they probably wouldn't want to go into it again. But I have trauma from growing up and not being affirmed. So I don't think either answer is a good way. But then they move on to a whole different subject, so I'm kind of just confused now.
Absurd. because
No,
I'm
you
here in
don't.
the room. So
No, okay, thank you.
I feel like personally, like if we're talking about like a 12-year-old getting top surgery, like to me that's just like medical malpractice. Because I know for me, like to get top surgery, like I can only get it at 18 because my insurance covered it at 18. But I had to start that process like long before. Like even hormones was a long process. So I think there's like an area of literal like medical malpractice because no like kid at that age should be getting that in my opinion because you do not know. But I do think there are instances where like a 16 or 17-year-old like could get it. And I don't know if that means like banning like below 16 or like whatever, but.
So in the UK, it was the, I can't remember what it was. It's the reason why they're shutting down the Tavistock Clinic in the UK.
I don't know why. Blaire and Blossom just have these giant personalities, and I don't think they ever truly want to like just listen, because I mean that is what this is about, and I know that all of them have spoke out about their experience on this podcast and how it um, was traumatic from all sides. But I think it is really immature that they keep interrupting each other. Like even when someone else is speaking, it's one of those two that kind of.
UK though is because they found that when you start a child on hormone or on puberty blockers then hormones, it leads to, it's basically a foregone conclusion that they're going to end up having surgery. It puts them on a path to it's a sunk cost fallacy.
I just, again, I don't understand this obsession with
Obsession.
other people's children.
it's about caring about kids.
I'm talking. Oh my God.
Again, like the interruption thing is kind of.
It's
Get it
obsession.
together.
I have it together.
Yo, the obsession with the conservatives about other people's kids. If it is your child, it is your choice what you do with your kid.
Just to talk about someone who's at 16 and their level of consent in the state of California, from my understanding, someone who's 16 can also drop out of high school, which would severely affect their life. And they have access to that decision if they want to, because say they want to get into the job market or whatever their reason is.
I should have paused it like a second ago, but Alexander brings up a good point of, and I don't think it's just conservatives. I think it's everyone, because people will be like, it's my child, like I will do my parenting how I feel. I think there is a point, some level of a point to that where, it is my child, it's my parenting. I think there is a point where you force things on your children that make them uncomfortable or it's traumatic, and that's where people should step in. But I don't think that. I think that comes from both sides, like very heavily.
But they have that option to make that choice at 16. I will agree with you that someone at 12, I'd be uncomfortable with somebody at 12 years old getting surgery completely, because there's still a lot of the world for them to learn about themselves, how to navigate it, et cetera, et cetera. But for us to have access to be able to drop out of high school if we wanted to, and make such a life-changing decision that could affect, you economically, socially, so many different ways. But then to say, you know what, you're not old enough to make this decision, for me, again, as somebody who was 16 and was in such a religious family and all the restrictions that I had, if I didn't have access to those things, I don't know if I would be here. And I've learned a lot through my transition and through my access. And I even grew up in the wild, wild west where everything was still on YouTube and we didn't really even have medical providers really even giving us guidance, and especially trans men. So I find it rather uncomfortable that we're able to make a 16-year-old be able to make that type of decision. An 18-year-old is allowed to go into service, but for some reason we can't give that same access to a kid to have that consciousness. Because I can tell you at 16, I knew who I was. I'm not at 12, not at 14, but 16, there's a certain level of consciousness and experience that you've experienced in society that you understand the pocket you fit in.
But just because other bad things happen doesn't mean that that is okay. It's like, so just because they can drop out of school means they should be able to cut their breasts off?
Well, wasn't that a lot? I just want to say,
Uy, hermano, mi visión del futuro.
Well, wasn't that a lot? I just want to say thank you for joining my podcast, and I just want to put it out there that in no way, shape, or form was this to judge anyone. It's just to, get a grasp at other people's opinions and how I opinionate with, what's going on or what their opinions are. I thank everyone that was on this podcast because I think it does open people's minds to new things. Um, there is a lot that I did not put in, so if you want to see a part two, just put in the comments you want to see a part two. Um, I left a lot of the controversy out because I kind of just wanted to be an honest and raw review. But if you enjoyed it, um, please put in the comments that you want to see a new one. Make sure you hit that follow, turn on your notification bell, and yeah, thank you so much. Welcome to Trans Talk.